Maxie Sandbar here for the fourth installment of A Six Pack With. We've got the pleasure of having Ryan and Jeremy with us of Jangle and Roar Records, as well as singers and members and artists of the Genius File and the DeLoreans. So let's start off by talking about the label or record. How would you guys describe it?
It's a label. I mean, there's two records coming out on it. Like Jeremy's got Live Outrageous coming out on the 27th. They're doing a CD release party at Side and Fontaines. It's 27th, right? Mm-hmm. We're gonna open up for them with family and friends.
Friends and relatives.
Friends and relatives. We're gonna come out with our album. It's gonna be Some New Invention. The Genius File, Some New Invention. That's gonna be end of July. Kind of how we got into this whole mix-up thing is that we played a show with the DeLoreans. This is probably over a year ago at the Rudd, and Jeremy came up to us afterwards and was really critical in a good way of how our songs sounded. Like he picked up on certain elements of it and things that we were doing, and that's not something you typically hear from musicians. It's typically a very great set, blah blah blah. And he came up and he had very specifics about, you know, this song with this part in it, doing this when you were doing that, and that just kind of like clicked in my head that the guy was really listening. And so I listened to some of his stuff online, and I thought it was fantastic. So I asked him to help us. You know, we had just started recording an album. I asked him to help us with one song on it. So we did this song called "World's Strongest Man," which is awesome. Like we went out and went to my office and recorded close to 100 drum hits, trying to get the sound of a cannon. It was really cool, and it was just a really fun experience. And so from there, we decided that, you know, Jeremy wanted to work with him a whole lot, and he wasn't pushing us away. So we decided to ask him more if he would do some more songs with us. So we went and we recorded some tracks at the funeral home with Jeremy, and Jeremy helped us a lot with the arrangements and the vocals. We went down to Benton, Kentucky, and worked with this guy Craig Morris, who's with the band, or was with the band called Ideal Free Distribution. He's Robert Schneider's brother-in-law.
Apples and Stereo? Yeah,
Apples and Stereo, and he did a fantastic job with us. And you know, Jeremy ended up helping us with the cello arrangements with Molly Goforth. She did the cello parts for us, and you know, it just ended up being a really fantastic experience. So we just kind of had Jeremy step in and kind of be our creative guide in what we were trying to do. Like, you know, can we do this, Jeremy? And Jeremy would show us the ways of doing it and how we could accomplish it. And it was, you know, he allowed us to do so many things that we wouldn't have ever been able to do on our own.
So you guys started off basically with your own albums, which is
absolutely
the best way to do it if you're doing your own label. Start with the
solos, yeah,
the ways you believe the best. Yeah. Now, what do you? I know you've got some technical background, you've got some business background. What exactly are you going to be providing that would be different than, let's say, other labels in town or other national labels or regional labels?
You want to?
I think that, to elaborate on some things Ryan said, that both of us share a great enthusiasm for music going on in Louisville. We both think that there's some really great stuff going on, and I think there's just there's so many things that we could do with all the people going around here. There's so many clubs and venues and bands of different genres and different styles. I think there's so many ways that that bands today face so many challenges in terms of finance and logistically trying to put out an album. And I think that what we could provide really is just facilitating the entire process and the creation of an album. We don't want to just slap our logo on an album and release it and throw a party and blow some balloons up. I think.
No, we definitely want to put our own hearts into it.
So what would be the ideal band if you went to a show and saw them? Obviously, from what I hear, it would be someone in the infancy of their band life.
Well, not necessarily the infancy of that album cycle. Like all these albums that bands put out, like there's a cycle. Like you put one out and you kind of promote it and all of that, and then you know, either the band kind of gets antsy and wants to do something new. You know, we want to step in when they're getting antsy. You know, they got some songs, you know, recorded, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they got some songs recorded, and you know, they're ready to start moving to the next level. We want to step in there. We want to help them take it from the infancy of the song kernels, the song ideas. You know, they've already been out there promoting their band, out there touring, you know, other albums, and they're ready to kind of move on to the next thing. But they want to spend more time than is typically fiscally possible. Like recording an album is a really expensive event, and to sit there and try to do all of these different overdubs and harmonies harmonies and backups and all these different things that most bands like see in their head. Like, you know, we want everything to sound like Pet Sounds. We want everything to sound like these really densely layered albums. It's hard to do that type of stuff. Like, it's you know, it's pretty fiscally hard. Like, it costs a lot of money to do that shit. And so we want to step in and kind of help them do that sort of thing.
So would there be a target genre of bands or artists that you'd be looking at, or is it if you see something that you like, then you're going to go for it?
I think at this point it's probably too early to rule out anything. It's not a good thing to do in the beginning of a project, but I think probably, you know, a good place to start is the type of bands that we are, that play the places we do, that are into kind of the same things. But I don't think we exactly cancel on them.
Like, very early on, Jeremy kind of told us something, and it kind of rang with Matt, the other singer in the band, and I, was that you know, a band can have a very, very, very shitty sounding album or sounding recording, but as long as it's a really, really, really good song, it doesn't really matter. If you go back to like the 60s and the 50s and the, you know, probably, yeah, 50s and 60s, like none of those, there weren't very good recordings necessarily, but they were such great songs because they focused so much on the craftsmanship of it. And like that's really kind of what we want to look for, is like bands who are focusing on that aspect of it, and so we can step in and help them fill out, you know, the rest of it.
Do you think that that will be something that's a push and pull between yourself and the band of saying, no, don't mess with it, I love our sound? Or are they going to say, well, if I want your work, I will listen to whatever you say?
And that's, yeah, absolutely. Like, we're going to want someone who wants to embrace that type of philosophy. Like, you know, if they don't want to do that, then they probably have their own vision, and you know, so be it. And I'm sure it's a fantastic vision, but if they want to kind of go in the direction of what we're talking about, we're definitely going to want bands who are going to be open and embracing. And that's going to be something that we understand is going to be a difficult aspect of this.
And so we've talked about how far back you're going to take them, basically from the sound and bring them to the creation of an album. Where, as a record label, do you take the album after it's in, for example, the DeLorean's album that's coming out next week? You know, once it's here, physical in my hand, what do you do with it next?
We're working on our own, and for distribution, we're talking to a couple distribution routes. You know, in terms of promotion and all of that, that's something that we're kind of experimenting and working on our own, on these first two albums of our own. Like, we're not going to experiment on someone else's baby. I mean, we're doing this on our own. So, you know, that's going to be a trial and error. Like, I really don't have an excellent answer. Like, you know, neither of us have put out, you know, tens of thousands selling albums, or even thousands of thousands selling albums. So it's going to be definitely a trial and error type of experience. But we want to handle that internally. That's going to be one of the core competencies that we actually do as a label, is we're going to help them, you know, bring the album from infancy and see the kid go off to college and help make sure that they do with their lives. So,
well, with the time remaining, let's talk briefly about each of your bands individually. And if you were going to not do a review of the actual CD, but could you tell the audience, of people who haven't seen you, by the way, they're on Louisville's for Lovers album. It's one of my favorite tracks on the album. But how would you describe the DeLoreans to the person who has not heard your sound?
I would say the DeLoreans have roots, for sure, in some of the sounds of 60s bands like the Kinks and the Beatles. We're definitely interested in approaching subjects from a colorful and maybe over-the-top point of view. We're definitely interested in really tight rhythm sections and virtuosic kind of vocal sound. We want to go to places that some other bands don't go, and the things that we're interested in are, you know, varied, but I think we have a really tight, concise kind of view of music and the way that we want it. And really, you know, we like certain things about music, and we haven't heard those things done exactly the way we want to, and that's what we do. And we try to be as great as we can when we do it live.
And the Genius File?
One of the things that, like, Jeremy's helped us with is trying to figure out a concise vision. Like, they have a much more concise vision of what they're trying to do. At the end of the day, like, you know, we're almost like the kids throwing paint or at the canvas. Like, we don't know what we're going for. Like, you know, we're just trying to find the best picture.
And when's the next show?
Our next show is actually with them, and then we're playing the Germantown Festival before them, the Germantown Shotgun Festival. And then we have another gig at the Poorhouse. It's on our MySpace. I think it's in July. And we're going to try to do some shows, you know, we've done Lexington, Indianapolis, Bloomington, you know, things like that. We're trying to do some more Midwest type stuff.
Well, great. Well, best of luck to both of you all. Great luck on the label. I love both the band sounds. Check them out. This has been the 4th installment of the Six Pack With.